Success isn't built when everything is going your way. It's built when your career, your reputation, and everything you work for is on the line. Gilmar went from growing up in an immigrant family with very little to leading teams on Wall Street, surviving one of the biggest banking collapses in U.S. history, and discovering what leadership really means under pressure. In this conversation, we dive into discipline, resilience, investing, and the mindset required to build lasting wealth. This is Nemology. My man Gilmar.
How you doing, man?
Dude, welcome to the show, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. I mean, it's been a long time coming, so I'm excited to finally be here.
Dude, absolutely. And you know what some of you guys may not know, Gilmar is actually an investor in our hotel project here in Medellin. And this is the first week that we've actually met in person.
That's correct.
And you've been an investor in it for a year and a half.
Yeah, it's been a long year and a half, but it's been tough to get out to Medellin, obviously, with a lot that's going on back in the States. But finally excited to be here. Finally excited to see what the project is doing, how much it's evolved, the success that it's been, and what's coming for the future. Just hearing you talk about the future plans, just leaves such a satisfying sense of ambition, hunger that I'm excited. One, we're bringing something to Medellin that's unique and different, which is special in its own. But at the same time, we've created a group of friends that will remain friends now for a lifetime, right? So
absolutely,
it's been one of the better decisions I've made in investing.
Absolutely, I absolutely love hearing that, especially from you, because you are somebody that literally all day deals with investments and trading, and even just hanging out with you, your phone is blowing up off the hook. And one thing I truly respect about you is you're exactly like me. No matter what the time or what you're doing, you will always pick up the phone for all of your investors, all the people that are your clients, everybody that you work with.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your day-to-day life and how that all works.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest, most useful skill sets anybody could have is being responsive. Now, that doesn't mean you're always going to have all the answers, but you're going to have to think, how can I solve for those answers? So whether that's family, friends, investors, clients, or someone you're just meeting for the first time, I find people's time is the most valuable. And if you show people that you're willing to stop what you're doing to help them or try to solve for a problem for them, it speaks volumes and it creates long-lasting relationships. It's the first thing that really shows you how to foster a relationship. So, discussing my day-to-day, I work in finance, without saying what bank I work at. I work for one of the larger Wall Street banks. What that means is I wake up, start my day about 5:30 a.m. West Coast time, Pacific time. And I start my day usually something very pleasant. I walk my dog. I have my earlier breakfast, yogurt, orange juice, supplementals, anything that's going to get me in the right mindset. And I always make my bed first, right? Because I don't know if you ever follow Navy SEALs, something that I've read in books and I've worked closely with on Wall Street. They say making your bed in the morning is showing you that you're accomplishing something right off the bat. Mm-hmm. It's a way to already set the tone for the day.
Right.
If you really were to take a step back and say how many people actually make their bed every day, probably not as many as you think, right? If you ever walk into a friend's house for dinner, you can kind of take a glance into their room, pillows all over the place, etc. I like to keep my bed neat because that's where I rest my head. That's where I ultimately reset and also just like restart my mindset. So after I start my day off, I obviously start reading emails, start seeing what's going on in the market news, what happened in Asia overnight, what happened in Europe overnight. How is that going to affect my first hour of trading? How is that going to affect my first hour of responding to clients? Are clients going to be in a panic because there's a sell-off? Are clients going to be in a very uptick, positive move because the market's going to rally? Is there new news? Obviously, if people have been following the markets recently, whether it's tariffs, geopolitical events, it's swinging the markets left and right. One, for me, in my position, that makes my day awesome, right?
Yeah.
Because no day is the same. And that's something I really love about my job. I feel that when I take a second to look back at how I've developed myself into the professional I am today, is having to deal with the different challenges every day and assimilating to the different changes that are going on. Once I get through the first hour of trading, placing any new trades in the market, any new market outlooks, I spend time with my team. Now I got to get my team's kind of mindset right. So that's about 7:30 in the morning. The first thing I do is check in with everybody. How are they feeling? Are they bringing positive attitudes to the office? Is there anything going on outside of work personally that I could help with? And I also set them up for the day. These are your 2 to 3 tasks that you're going to have to complete today. That doesn't mean you're not going to have 10 to 15, but these 3 I want you to focus on, and I want you to focus on completing. I think that sets the tone for them, right? As leading a team is difficult as it is, because you deal with different personalities. So creating structure for them is very important, right? Because if you some of them are going to be self-starters, some of them are going to be self-motivated, self-aware. Others are going to want structure, right? But you need to be consistent, right? The only way you create scalability in any business is consistency. So I treat all of them the same, treat them all with respect, give them their deliverables. I'm there to help them accomplish those deliverables, but I kind of wait to see if they could do it on their own as well. I spend the second half of the morning kind of in client meetings, whether that's a Zoom or in-person breakfast, meeting with clients, discussing portfolio reviews, discussing any market questions, any new investments that are on the horizon on Wall Street that we should be considering. Obviously, people following the markets that are watching this podcast are going to know that AI trade's very popular. So everybody's constantly having questions about, what's going on with AI. How are people going to benefit for that in the coming years? And as we know, there's a massive change coming with AI, right? We are going to gain efficiencies with that. So you could just imagine how long the meetings could get.
For sure.
I then spend my lunch. I try to spend my lunch every day with my senior business partner. People people always ask me because they see us walking together. They're like, do you guys grab lunch every day? If we're not at a client meeting, yes, we do. It's a moment for us to take a step back in the middle of the day and talk about our personal life and talk about our business. What are we doing right? What can we improve? Even when we're utilizing ourselves at an 80% utilization and you're saying, okay, we got a successful thing going. How do we marginalize that and increase it to 90, 95, right? You got to strive for raising the bar every day. So it's a moment we spend for about 40 minutes walking together, getting out the office, getting a breather, running into colleagues, in the Century City campus, as they call it, over in Los Angeles, doing all our nods and smiles, our handshaking. And then, we come back and we end our day once the market closed with just running performance. How do we do for the day? How are clients doing for the quarter? What do we need to change? Any asset allocations we need to do? And then I think I spend the end of the day kind of just dealing with kind of administrative stuff, meaning, did mistakes happen on the team, right? There's mistakes happen every day. No one's perfect. And I don't expect anybody on my team to be perfect, but I expect them to raise their hand and tell me when they made a mistake. So you spend that second half of the day kind of course correcting, fixing paperwork, kind of readjusting, calling clients that might have had, a slight of a negative client experience and, apologizing on behalf of a junior team member, et cetera. And at the same time, pulling that team member aside and reestablishing a procedure with them so that they don't make that mistake again and reassuring them. I think on Wall Street, one of the things that makes you great is a lot of the best mentors empower their junior people. So with empowerment comes a sense of time. It's okay to make mistakes. People are going to make them. But how do you fix them? How do you move forward? How do you grow from them?
Yeah.
And then I spend the rest of the evening catching up either with friends, family, reading on kind of any market news that actually entertains me on my personal side of investing, and which is what has led me to meet you. One of the things for me building out a stock portfolio was, how do I get involved in real estate? And I was very fortunate to meet one of our investors, one of your good friends, Mike Eisenberg, and he was able, we had shared many conversations over time. And I kept saying, how do I get involved? How do I get involved? Because I could do a phenomenal job building a stock portfolio. Look, you can only measure performance based on how the market's going to do for the year. Some years are going to be great. Some years are going to be down.
Of course.
Right? Real estate is something that has always intrigued me, because when you really look around, real estate only grows and only appreciates. One, it's not my forte. I can't say I know real estate, but I've learned a lot through Mike, and now being involved in this investment, and just seeing kind of the evolution of the construction and how you renovate and update the value of a property is phenomenal. And it's no different than building a stock, right? So you're building a company, except it's a property, right? So there's a lot of fundamentals that I've been able to translate and apply to it, while I still have a ton to learn, and I lean on you guys for that stuff. And that's what's great. But Mike has brought a wealth of knowledge in that sense. And he's introduced me to a handful of different real estate investments. This one in particular hits home because I think, being from a Latin background, I'm Salvadorian, first in my family, born in the United States. First in my family to be fortunate to get a full scholarship to a top university in the United States, Wisconsin-Madison. It was something that I was able to finally come back and do something for a Latin American country, in this
Yeah.
case, Colombia. So that is something that motivated me a lot when I was at the decision-making moment of investing in the hotel.
So I absolutely love hearing that, because now it makes it a lot easier to understand why nobody can message you until the trading hour closes.
Yeah. And I apologize for that in advance. It's just, for me, unfortunately, and look, even while I travel and I'm on vacation and you're a witness now of it, my phone doesn't stop ringing, whether it's a text, whether it's a message, an email, or phone call. I have to stay connected. I manage a very large book of business. And the key is, most people, when they want an answer, they don't necessarily need to know that you have the answer, but they want to know that you've received that request or that inquiry. Most of the times, given my experience now in work, being in Wall Street for over 20 years, I tend to know a lot, but there's still so much I don't know. But I tend to know when clients are of concern and they need a response, and just say, hey, I received that response. Let me look into it. I'll take care of that. When it's urgent, hey, I'm addressing this right now, no matter where I'm at. I'll get this addressed. I'll make a phone call, an inbound call into my team or someone at the firm to help me execute. But it's something that carries weight. And I think in a business where people build trust and people look for you to help them grow their wealth or protect their wealth, in my case, being responsive is one of the key things, and it's okay to always tell someone I don't know the answer. I think people appreciate that honesty and saying, but I will be resourceful and I will find it for you.
That's right.
And I'm sure as you're building out, and leading our project of the hotel, there's a lot of things you're learning along the path, not necessarily about real estate, but about real estate in Colombia.
For sure.
And there's adjustments you have to make from a regulatory or governing law and how things operate here. So you could imagine, for me, it's always interesting. I know how glued this generation is to their phone. And sometimes you can see people that take 3 hours to respond to you, and it's like, pretty sure you got my phone. Unless you're literally on a flight, or you're really in a long meeting, in which depending on what people kind of do for a living, like people see it. And some people are honest and keep their read receipts, so you can see when they're not responding. So, that is why, for me, from those hours of the market, I'm glued. And it's honestly, for me, some of the best hours of my day. One, because the market's moving. I'm learning what's going on in the world from a geopolitical perspective, from a regional perspective, from even close to home, what's going on in Los Angeles. Now that I'm tied to Medellin, Colombia, I'm finding out what's going on here. I'm concerned from friends that live in different parts of the world. We have investors that live in Madrid, like Mike. He keeps me in the loop with what's going on there. So it's a way to just stay connected. And I think in a world where technology has grown so much with iPhones and kind of what's going on now with AI and the ability of how easy it is to access information, being connected is an important thing. I think that's going to be key to a lot of people's success as they continue to grow.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. 100%, man. And, I wanted to touch back, go back in time a little bit and see, what kind of set you up for, the man you are today and how you work and how you operate. Because I know for a fact, this is not a lifestyle a lot of people could handle or even want to attempt. So that's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of people that you are in charge of, and there's a lot of people's money and wealth and family that you're in charge of because of what you do with their extra wealth that they are entrusting with you. So what was your origin story? What were you like growing up, and how did you kind of get into this position where you are now?
Yeah. Look, I was born into a Salvadorian family. My mother and father are from El Salvador. They both immigrated to the United States during the Civil War. For the people listening to this and are following El Salvador, they have a phenomenal president now, Bukele, who's done a significant 180 change for the country and brought so much positivity by cleaning up the violence, and growing up, for me, everything I heard about my country, and I've only traveled a handful of times, was that it was dangerous. So my parents left during the Civil War, a civil war within its own country, losing a lot of, Salvadorian people. And they met in New York, where I was born. So I was born in New York, in the Bronx, massive Yankee fan, which I carry my Yankee jerseys everywhere. And I'm a diehard Yankee fan. But growing up there, being born into an immigrant family in the United States in the 80s, what I saw as a child was a lot of struggle, financially and adjusting and, coming to a country where you really don't have much, right?
Yeah.
So I saw their sense of commitment and pride to get their family through day to day, right? And I think it was when I was in second grade, I went into the room as a 7-year-old and I saw my mom crying over some money. Look, at 7 years old, you really don't understand the impact or even how deep it is. But for me, I understood my mom was sad. And I said to myself, I went and grabbed her and I said, Mom, what's wrong? And she obviously confronted me and hugged me and said, nothing's wrong. But I could see I was smart enough at that age to know there was something related to money. So I quickly ran to my little toy drawer where I used to keep all the money that my uncles had given me over the years for my birthday.
Yeah.
They would always give me little $2 bills or, kind of, here's a $10 to go buy some ice cream. I've always been a saver for the people out there. I mean, there's a reason I was drifted towards Wall Street. I love money, right? Like I love numbers, I love investments. And I went and I grabbed what I had at the time. I don't know the exact amount, but I gave it to her. And she immediately, the instant emotion that I saw in her, it wasn't probably enough to fix the situation.
Right.
But it was meaningful. And she talks about it even at the dinner table all the time. For her, it was just one, she was shocked that a 7-year-old had saved some money.
Yeah.
Right. And she asked me where I had got the money. And I had told her, at the ice cream shop, I wouldn't spend all of it. I would always keep half of it. I'll buy a candy, but I'll keep the other half for later in case I ever wanted to, right? And fast forward, seeing that impact of what my parents were going through, I said to myself that day, I'm going to change this for my family. And that's like a 7-year-old, 10-year-old kid saying to himself, how do I change it? The only way I could really change it is by studying and getting a full scholarship and going to school. So I made a huge adjustment into becoming very studious. So all through middle school and high school, 4.0 GPA, I was handpicked as a rising senior in Los Angeles to get the Posse full tuition scholarship.
Wow.
To the University of Wisconsin. At the time, I got accepted into USC, I got accepted into Berkeley, NYU, but no one was giving me a full scholarship. Wisconsin was giving me everything. Meaning I even got a laptop when I enrolled for my business course, et cetera. So I weighed out everything based on top tier business schools. I knew I wanted to go into Wall Street. My mom wanted me to be a doctor. My father wanted me to be a lawyer. My brother kind of knew I had the charisma for business. I realized when I was sponsored skateboarding and one of my friends got injured, he started bleeding that I couldn't see blood because I overreacted. And I knew then, I can't be a doctor because I won't be able to be a surgeon. And that's really the only way doctors make money. But I ultimately, my father would take me and introduce me to so many lawyers that he knew that he would meet through the Air Force. And every time I sat with a lawyer, between the age of 13 to 16, I understood the job. It's memorizing how you solve cases from previous cases.
Right.
What did an existing lawyer, how was he creative enough to raise, the decision of the judge to prove someone guilty or not guilty, right? Based on the facts. But it required a lot of reading. And I could tell you with my type of personality, sitting there reading books that much wasn't that big of an appeal. So I remember hanging out with my brother, I think it was sometime in high school, maybe like freshman year, sophomore year. And I told him, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to be a doctor or a lawyer. I think my parents are going to be disappointed. Keep in mind, I had straight A's up until that point. So I was already kind of being groomed to just choose your career. You'll fall into place. My brother said, have you ever considered finance? And I said, why would you say so? Phenomenally, you're really good at math and you got the personality to walk in a room and talk and introduce yourself to anybody. Even as a child, I would do that, right? I would walk in. I was valedictorian at the time, through elementary school. So I would speak at these graduations and teachers would always say, this kid has, I love being in front of people and speaking, right? It's one of the things that motivates me. And I think I made that decision then. I think I was 13 years old and I said, I'm going to work on Wall Street. And my brother was like, yeah, we'll get you there. We'll do what we have to do. So when I was applying for the scholarship, first thing the donors for Posse, they asked me, they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to work on Wall Street. And keep in mind, I'm also a Latin kid at the time. I'm not familiar with these large banks at the time. Yeah. And I have to be full transparency here. I didn't know who Goldman Sachs was, who JP Morgan was. I just knew what Wall Street was. It's the stock market, right? And I had a handful of mentors. Some of the lawyers, when I had spoken to them during the kind of those mentoring, they said, well, you should pick a stock and follow it. So I think it was around 15 years old, I started following McDonald's because I used to love McDonald's. So I used to start following anything that the menu was changing. Why was the menu changing? What was driving that change? Some of it was demographics, some of et cetera. So I started keeping notes, right, in a little book of et cetera, et cetera. But when I was with the Posse Foundation and the donors asked me what I wanted to do, and I said Wall Street, there was one of the donors in the audience who was a retired partner from Goldman Sachs, who I view even to this day as a second father, because he really then leveled me up and took me to the next level of under his wing. And he promised me, he said, I could get you an interview, but that's it. I'm not going to guarantee you a job. It's going to be up to you to execute, land a job, and then even get promoted and grow. And but if I give you that, you have to come to Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm a kid from Los Angeles at the time. If you ever realize how cold Wisconsin is, I've never worn so much I've never worn so much chapstick and felt so cold at times.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, I was like, look, one, my parents couldn't afford college. And I knew I wasn't going to take on all that debt if I didn't have to. I knew I was going to bet on the one thing I knew, bet on myself, right? So I agreed with him. I said, yes, if you could get me an interview at Goldman Sachs, I will come to Wisconsin. And I could have gone to all these other schools and USC was giving me half a scholarship. Berkeley was giving me like 25%. And I would have figured it out, right? Financial aid. There's things that help at the time. We live in a country that empowers students that really want to develop themselves and continue to study and continue their education. So I know I would have figured it out, but I took the agreement, and as a rising sophomore, I landed at Goldman Sachs, which was one of the youngest interns at the time, 19 years old. And I spent kind of the next 3 summers really at the real university. Wisconsin was Wisconsin. I was learning how to be on time, how to manage a schedule, how to go to all my classes, how to deliver on midterms, and ultimately how to start creating a schedule for myself. But it was at that first job at Goldman that I really started to learn from the veterans. And that's really what motivated me. And it goes back to, and I tell myself and I tell all my mentees today and all the junior people I work with, we live in a competitive environment. Everybody's gonna want to make money, be in lucrative situations. The only way to really define yourself or create a brand for yourself is to outwork the next person. So you got to work harder, right? And some people are like, what does that mean? Like you said, I think you started off the question with, this isn't for everybody. And I don't think it is. But, when you think about any career path and you look across the board, anybody that's been successful in anything, and we could talk about like people like Jeff Bezos who worked out of a garage, put in the time, right? It's always about how harder you're going to work than the next person, right? Because one, you're gonna fail. You're not supposed to hit a home run. You're supposed to hit base hits, get on base, and eventually get home, right? And I think a lot of people go out and hit a home run, but you spend a lot of time making mistakes, and those are the mistakes that define you and create the integrity you have, right? And I mentioned that a little bit when I was, talking to you earlier about the junior people I work with. I would always appreciate when they raise their hands and tell me they made a mistake. I don't expect people to be perfect. I've made mistakes. I've made mistakes that have cost money, and I've been shaking and I've been scared. I've traded and put on positions in the market where I haven't been able to sleep, right? I mean, that all comes kind of with the territory. And I'm sure you could touch on it in real estate. You make mistakes. You probably order the wrong, product. And then what do you got to do? This isn't let me return it. I'm not going to put, all this back in the mail. Like, I mean, I bought it. Now it's a lost cost, right? So I think for me, the thing that's always drive me, and that was the main point of the question, was I saw my parents struggle and I knew I had to get them out. And I shortly did that. I think maybe in my early 20s, I started making enough money where, I could help them out. They were comfortable. Again, my parents are very humble people. They don't need a lot. But then it was also, you're a product of your environment. Now you're on Wall Street and you're surrounded by some really intelligent, great people that are motivated. And with that comes a lifestyle, right? That comes a lifestyle of, the only way you continue to meet or get referrals is by being in the same environment, right? So you got to go to the nicer restaurants. You got to travel to the nicer parts of the world, right? Because that's where most people have the same kind of in common thought, right? Where do I want to be traveling? Saint-Tropez, France. St. Bart's, like we're Greece, right? And most people can't afford those, but the wealthy can, right? So that's how you start to integrate yourself. Now you're putting yourself in a situation, and similar to that Michael Jordan mentality, it's game 6. We're not going to game 7. Now it's time for you to execute, right? How do you get in front of that person? I tell a story to one of my mentees all the time. I couldn't get in front of one of our senior partners at my first firm that I mentioned, Goldman, and everybody was trying to get on this guy's calendar. But I knew his schedule. I knew he would always get up and go to the bathroom right before he would go to lunch. So what I did is I just waited for literally that 15-minute window, stared at his office. As I saw him get up to go, I walked to the bathroom to go meet him. And while we were at the stall together, I then introduced myself. And then this guy's obviously like, what the hell's going on? Who's this young kid just trying to introduce himself? But as we're washing our hands, as we're leaving, I'm like, it'd be great to just get some moment of time on your calendar, 10, 15 minutes. He was like, yeah. I mean, I've never seen anybody follow me to the bathroom, is what he said. So he's like, yeah, you can reach out to my secretary. I'll remember you. And I got on his calendar, and everybody was like, how'd you manage to get on this guy's calendar? But again, it's that motivation where you got to think outside the box, be creative, stay hungry, stay foolish, and say, how am I going to get in front of a person? That specific story doesn't change from getting in front of a prospect, getting in front of a client, and in this case, getting in front of an investment. If you see something great happening, some of the things you shared to me in the last couple of days are some of the great things you guys are doing in Medellin. And the first thing, it was music to my ears. I was like, how do I get involved? I was like, and some of my questions were like, well, do you guys have all the investors already, et cetera? Because I think, hanging out here for the last 9 days, there's a lot going on in Medellin. And I think this place is going to continue to grow and stimulate. And there's a lot of beautiful properties being built. It's interesting to see kind of what type of client base is going to come here eventually. But with the geopolitical things happening in the world, I think South America is a key place for people to move to, especially in retirement. I'm sure you're experiencing that yourself.
Absolutely, 100%, man. I'm absolutely in love with it. There's no place I'd rather be in the world. And I lived in Europe. That's where I grew up. I lived in Canada. I lived in the U.S. And for me, and for like my cultural preferences and how things work and how things are, I feel very comfortable in Latin America, because this is very similar to what I was used to growing up, where Canada and US was always like this sort of like foreign place to me. Even though I love the US, especially Florida was always very near and dear to my heart. And it was kind of where I got my, first start of like entrepreneurship and like through like American capitalism.
Yeah.
In Canada, I'll always be grateful for what it gave me and my family. And during that kind of come up stage. But it was always something that felt too rigid, too structured, too many rules, too many things that are outdated, and not a real way for me to become a part of the builders of society, where you always kind of felt like there's a lot of people doing stuff and you're kind of following along.
Yeah.
Whereas when you come down here, because of the greater risk, a lot of those people that are already well established, why would they do that? They don't need to do that. But this gives me a chance to kind of position my next generations for that next level that I've seen those people get. And sometimes, everybody knows that rich person in their town, right? Oh yeah, this guy owns this and he built this and he did this and that and that and that. There's a fucking statue of him and a bench and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that dude came there at some point, or his family did, or he had to do a lot of things to earn that now reputation that he has. But it wasn't always the same, and it wasn't always easy. And to me, it's really, really fun to be part of something, be involved in something like that. Now, I got to ask you, obviously, we're talking about a lot of great things and good things that have happened and the growth of everything, but we also got to talk about some of the negatives. So I want to ask you, in your life, what would you say was your darkest moment?
There's been a handful of moments. I could probably speak about the most recent one that I could definitely earmark as one of the toughest moments in my career, was when the bank that I was working for First Republic Bank, went into receivership. Which, for the people that know these banks, it's probably the second biggest financial institution failure of the United States. I had put about 5.5 years into it, watched this bank grow, and the challenges that came with waking up every morning and seeing your bank on TV, on CNBC, seeing the stock price go from $115 to 80 to 60 to 40 to, halt trading on your stock. Investors, people that are invested in First Republic, people that had their money were pulling their funds out. The amount of conversations that you have to have with clients, with internal employees, with family, everybody's worried about you, that what's going to go on. And I had come from such a phenomenal success story. People, in some cases, you kind of see it out there. Some people were happy to see it happen. Some people were kind of like, Gilmar's finally getting his moment of, hit reality. Other people you could see come out of the woodwork, care about you, calling, are you getting sleep? You're going to be okay. They give you those encouraging words. But the level of education and experience you come out of it, from it, has now shaped me. There's no moment that makes me nervous anymore.
Yeah.
I could definitely say, we were going into a pitch recently with my senior business partner. He was like, you're not even nervous. I'm like, at this point, you don't get nervous. At this point, you don't get nervous. You go through something like a bank failure, and I think it changes you. It changes the way you feel. It changes the way you react to pressure, right? I've always been great at pressure, and that was one of the reasons I was great at trading and executing and managing, clients. But going through that experience really changed me on how I act, right, under pressure. And one of my friends, really good friends of mine, said, during the worst moments in life, people always remember who kept it cool. And it's something that made sense to me, because people even now talk about it. Junior people on my team that said, you've never shown a sign of stress anymore. And it's because, for people that have seen The Departed, it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio scene where he's like, the hand's not moving, I'm steady. Yeah. At that point, you're one-on-one with reality. You're gonna give it your best. You're either gonna win the pitch or you're gonna lose the pitch, or you're gonna execute or you're gonna fail. Again, like what I mentioned, the people that fail the most are the most successful. So for me, I think it was a memorable moment that taught me to humble myself, right? From all those lavish dinners, all those cool vacations, all the designer and all the stuff you're buying, and all the Instagram, social media that you want to post so people see what you're up to. It really took a tone back in my life. And I said, for those next 60 days plus, while the bank went into receivership and ultimately went into the FDIC of the United States, it was one of the most humbling experiences of my life. Like, you could be at top of the world one moment, really at the bottom the next moment. And you remember those quotes, in that movie Blow with Johnny Depp and Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
He's like, you remember, George, when you're on top, it's never as good as it feels. When you're down, you never think you're going to be back up. and I remember those things because it applies, right?
Absolutely.
When you're on top of the world, you think, you got it all. But you learn as you mature and you humble yourself that stuff's just it's just extra, right? Like, you want to take care of your family, your health, the people around you. And you just want to be, like you said, when you mentioned that guy that came to that town and had to build that town up to get that statue and get that bench, he wasn't being a show off. He saw opportunity, right? So an example of that receivership, keeping my cool and keeping my steady consciousness during it, helped me then excel when the bank I work for now came in and acquired us, right? Because they came in and acquired a piece of the business. And people now say, oh, you got the golden parachute, which is what they say. They give you a golden parachute and they tell you jump because it's gold, right? Yeah. Like, you're going to be fine. But I saw a lot of people lose, their life savings. I saw a lot of grown people cry in their offices, people that didn't have that second chance. And again, you go through these life experiences that kind of hit you different emotionally, and hit you different also from an ambition perspective. Like, you got to learn to balance that, right? When it's going to be enough. You hear the quotes on movies like Wall Street, and I hate to keep quoting Wall Street, but it's Jordan is, what's your number, right? It's like, oh, I don't have a number, right? Like, it's just, you just want more, right? Like, people always say that, or, Boiler Room, get out there and start selling, right? Like, and look, those are movies I watch religiously and I quote because I'm like, I'm glued to the screen on them. But you start to realize these are real people out there. And like you said, people come to you wealthy. They want to stay wealthy. So how do you manage that? But, for me, it was one of the toughest moments where I had to really shut down. And you start to realize, sometimes people say it's lonely on top. And you ask yourself, is it really lonely on top? Because there are people that care about you out there. And the most shocking people came out of the woodwork. People I never even thought followed Wall Street. Because some people don't, right? Let's just call it what it is. Some people aren't following stocks every day. It's not in their nature, right? There's plenty of people out there that are just kind of going about their day, living happy lives, etc. And it's great. But there were people that are coming out. They're like, hey, I hear what's going on in the news. Just checking in on you. Because they know, one, how hard I work, and etc. So it was a time for me to reset my sense of confidence. You go from a change where you're egotistical to a change where you're just confident.
Yeah.
And there's a massive difference in
Huge,
both
huge.
those personality traits. And I think at a young age, I came off very egotistical to a lot of people. At first I thought I had it all and et cetera. And you learn that no matter how much you have it all, you're going to have some setback in life. And sometimes those setbacks come sooner than others. Sometimes they're health setbacks. Sometimes they're monetary setbacks. For me, it was a time in my life where I had to really readjust myself. But I said to myself at the time, I'm going to be strong for my team, and I'm going to show my sense of leadership through them. I'm going to reassure them every step of the way. And, me and my senior business partner promised them that they would have jobs at the end of this, and they all did. So we stuck to our word in that sense. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to navigate. I mean, I remember I was probably sleeping 2 hours a day at the time. I was going to sleep at like 4. I remember having like European CNBC on, and they were talking about it. Obviously it was headlines, right? So, for me, I couldn't sleep. I wasn't getting along. Now they have the Aura ring that tracks your sleep and all these things that tell you, like, I know you don't got to tell me. Some ring doesn't have to tell me I'm not getting sleep.
Yeah.
I know when I'm stressed. You know what I mean? But with that said, it was a time that was humbling. But again, like I said, I came out of it on, as a much better person. And I think as a much better person, I now could control their sense of stress and pressure when things hit the fan. And I think people have noticed that now more than ever. Because I think one thing you learn is no matter what happens, it's going to be up to you to really find a solution. How are you going to become resourceful to execute and get yourself out of it, right? You can make a trading error. Now, how do you fix that trading error, right? Like, it's not so much, don't dwell on the negative. Figure out what you need to fix. Figure out what you need to implement so it doesn't happen again, and stick to those simple guidelines. And I think you start to find that you're building yourself.
Yeah.
Similar to like when you're building, a property, right? You make some mistakes. You're only because you order the wrong, tile. That's not mean you're not going to finish the property.
Yeah.
Right. It's a setback. It sucks. It's probably going to cost you some money. But now it's like, all right, how do I readjust this? How do I save money on this order, et cetera? How do I still meet my investment goal on my return, et cetera? So that was one of the toughest things that I think I had to deal with recently. And I think that I'm proud that I did. When I look back at it, people say you got to go through some life-changing events. For me, when I started on Wall Street in 2008, during a financial crisis, people said that must have been the craziest moments of my life. And I say, no, I was 21 years old. I really didn't know what was, I mean,
Everything was great.
I saw a lot of my friends losing jobs, and Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, et cetera. And you would have thought that would have been a life-changing event, right? But it wasn't, right? For me, the life-changing event was this bank going bankrupt. But again, I'm thankful I worked at the bank. I'm thankful I went through it because it shows you're battle tested, So when you say that to someone, you've gone through a cycle in the market where you've experienced ups and downs. The market is cyclical. There's always going to be ups and downs.
For sure.
There's always going to be some stock that's doing great that starts doing bad, right? Peloton was crushing it during the pandemic. Look where it's at today, right? And I say those are the moments where you need to step up and really carry yourself as a leader, carry yourself as someone that has experience. And the most experienced people in the room are usually the quieter ones that are thoughtful with kind of what they portray and what they say.
Yeah.
And the ones that kind of come out and show too much emotion, they haven't had that setback yet happen. So they haven't, but it's a humbling moment. And I think about Steve Jobs, one of the things he said during one of his speeches to a graduating class was his biggest piece of advice was stay hungry, stay foolish. Meaning stay hungry, stay foolish, meaning keep testing benchmarks, keep raising that benchmark. Like you don't know when you're going to come across the next best idea. And what that best idea means staying motivated and staying very connected to, you're not going to give up. And that goes back to my parents. My parents never gave up. When you think about their biggest setback was coming to a country where they had nothing, they had nobody. And my dad was a bartender in the Bronx. My mom was a housekeeper. And my mom struggled to learn English. My dad picked up on some English. And you're living in a country where you can't communicate and, you can only do so much. And now you have 2 kids. and you got to put them to school, and they're living in the projects in the Bronx. And my older brother, I remember my older brother was ditching school in 3rd grade. So, when they're ditching school that young, guess who they're hanging out? They're hanging out on the corners, right? And my mom said to my mom said to my dad, we got to move these kids to Los Angeles. Again, the same thing applies, right? It's how do you solve the problem? For her, it was we got to get them out of this project, right? Like we got to get them to Los Angeles. We'll figure it out there. You got to escape. Same thing applies when you're in a bad situation, right? Like how are you going to solve for your next job? I knew I had a sense of experience, and I would always get picked up by some firm. So I wasn't worried about finding a job, but I was more worried about my team. Like, how does my team feel? How does my team get through this? Right? Because the real leaders today, the people decide to follow are the people that don't lead by dictatorship. People that lead with my office is an open door. Like people come to me, people with text, problems, emotionally venting. Let's talk about it. Let's figure this out. Here, you got my undivided attention for 15 minutes. How could I help you? How could I teach you about something I went through that could maybe help you? And if I can't, how can I put you in touch with someone that I think could help you? Right? Again, that network grows larger than you think, right? I have people come into myself. I'm like, I think you connect great with this other colleague of mine. And they've never met that person. They would never meet that person otherwise. They would never cross paths. I connect them. Now they have a mentor-mentee relationship because I saw a little bit of them in each of them, right? And I think they could help each other. People get empowered by helping people. And I think the people that don't want to help people are the people that they're lacking some sense of leadership. It's a leadership quality I think you need to have in life.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I love what you were saying there, about the difference between egotistical and confident, because, when I look at that, I just remember like what I used to feel. And it's the same thing. Like egotistical is when you're right.
Yeah.
Right. But confidence is when you could be wrong and you're okay with it.
Yeah.
And when you're egotistical, I know I could do this. It's like, okay, that's fine. It's great. Cool.
Yeah.
But what happens if you're fucking wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
What if the unforeseen happens? Everything goes to shit. Fucking all of these things, boom, done, gone, crash. What does the egotistical person do in that moment? He never planned that far ahead. But the confident one is, he's not even looking at the opportunity. He's just like, I know that I can handle what's wrong. Yeah. And then you have all of these different things that could go wrong. And I look at it the same way when I look at a project. I'm like, what's all the fucking shit that can get fucked?
Yeah.
Like worst case scenario.
Yeah. What's everything that could go wrong?
And where do I want to take the risk? So I know that if I walk through the worst case scenario of every single thing that could happen, I know that I can handle all of the worst case scenarios. And then every single time that something doesn't go wrong, you're like, well, that's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. So you start to feel better. Whereas when you're just blindly optimistic and egotistical, you're like, fuck, I can knock this out of the park. The first thing that gets in your way as an obstacle is going to completely demoralize you.
Correct.
And now you got to reach into your discipline, try to pull your motivation back, and eventually you run out of motivation, then you burn out, then you got to pick yourself back up. But if you just enter it with all these things could go wrong.
Yep.
Everything could fucking change.
I think it comes down to accountability. I think that's the difference with being confident. I'm never afraid to admit I was wrong about something. I've sat with a junior person and I've guided them and told them to do something and it was the wrong thing to do. And they're like, the first thing they say was like, now everybody's going to think I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, hold on. Like, I'm more than happy to go on an email and fall on my sword and say, this was my fault. I didn't. Like, people would rather hear you say you're admitting that you made a mistake than this whole egotistical, like, I'm not wrong. I could have been right. Even when I'm right, I could have been wrong, but I'm right. Exactly. Like you could play that game, but like, I mean, it's a simple old saying, right? You gather more bees with honey, right? You got to play nice in the sandbox.
Exactly, and there's a time and place for that as well. Like publicly, it's immediate apology, but within partners, it's like, well, if me and your partners, like you don't want to hear my sorry. I don't want to hear your story. Correct. I want to hear what the fuck are we going to do and why did we think this was correct and how do we course adjust next time? So there's a different time and place for, hey, I'm sorry guys, my bad, my fault. Because a lot of the people there are not going to really understand your framework or why you thought that was right. And they don't even care. They just want to see, took accountability, great, done, keep going. Yeah. But me and you, I'm like, I don't need you to say sorry, bro. Yeah. I know you're sorry. We're both sorry.
Yeah.
How do we get through this?
I think the stakes get so much higher once you're in business with someone and money's on the line. And I say that because I deal with my senior business partner on a daily basis. And it doesn't matter when one of us makes a mistake, and we make mistakes. Like I say, the first thing I do, I pick up the phone, I call him, I say, so-and-so, I was like, I made a mistake. And I'm freaking out because there's only few mistakes I've made in life. But the first thing he tells me is like, just tell me what you did and let's see how we work through this.
Yeah.
And that's because we're both in the same foxhole.
You're in the same foxhole. That's
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
we're both going to be affected from a monetary perspective the
Yeah,
exact
good or
same
bad.
way, good or bad, right? So let's solve for this. And he makes mistakes sometimes, and I'm like, dude, and I help therapy, kind of walking him through, and vice versa. But that's a real partner, though. That's someone that you work through problems with together. I think I've seen some business partners, and some have made money together, and I know because I deal with a large set of clients. They stop talking, they stop being friends, and you wonder to yourself, like, what went wrong there? Because you guys made a fortune together, so you guys probably could have reinvented this idea again, or reapplied it to a new investment, right? Because you start to see, especially with me, when you start making different investment, ventures with different people, you start to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
You start working with the same group of people, and you say, okay, what's our next project, right? Once you close on it, right?
Yeah.
But there's some people that you kind of drift away. Some people are better. I say it to my business partner all the time. Some people play individual sports like tennis and golf because they're not very team oriented, right? You could see them in corporate environments, and I could almost spot them out when I come in a conference room. I could tell you who's playing tennis every weekend versus who's going and playing basketball, right? Like, who's more involved in group activities versus who's more involved in just, I like to do things on my own.
That's
right?
very interesting.
And,
That's
and,
very
and
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and it's something that to me, it's always like, and my business partner says, you got this keen sense. And I'm like, I could tell right up front. You could tell who's been military. You could tell who is more receptive to just structure. Just tell this person what they need to do every day at a certain time. And I guarantee you, they're not going to miss it. My business partner, how do you know? That's how he operates. He's gonna operate on that schedule. Don't tell him to think outside the box. That's not him. He follows procedure to the dime, right? Then you got other people. Don't put that person on a group project. Give them the research project where they could work on it on their own because they're going to execute.
Yeah.
You got to use everybody's best skill set to your advantage. And when you're working in large groups of people, the one thing I tell people, leave your ego at the door because I don't care, right? Like, you better come into work every day with a positive attitude, ready to roll up your sleeves. If you're wearing a Rolex, take it off because you're going to be typing away, right? Like if you're, if you're coming into work with a bad attitude, you're going to make everybody else around you sour. It's like a fruit that starts going bad, right? It starts killing all the other fruit around it. So, that sense of, partnership and what it takes to get there and raising that stake, again, it goes back to being humble. Let's not get mad at each other. We could get mad, but we'll talk about that anger later. Right now, let's just solve for the problem. And I think people lose sight of that. And that's where people's emotions get involved. And people say, oh, well, that's just my character. I'm like, if you want to be in a lucrative position, you better start learning how to work. Especially you now working in a foreign country, you're probably running into a situation where people are telling you, it's not how it works in Canada. It's not how it works in the United States. This is how it works here. This is how it's going to go.
Yep.
Now you're playing by my rules. So how do you adjust? You still got to attract more bees with honey, play nice in a sandbox with the person so that you could execute on it, right? So I think that speaks volumes as well. People that could work well together, and I think Wall Street, and I can only speak for my industry, I can't speak for others, does a phenomenal job creating that team-oriented environment where the people that excel the most are the people that work well with others. And I always tell people, the senior managers are going to look up, and at the end of your summer internship, they're not going to care what project you finish. They're going to see how you were working with other interns, because that's how you're going to fast forward. That's how you're going to work with other interns. That's how you're going to work with other colleagues when you're an associate, when you're a vice president, when you're a managing director. And the most successful corporations have diversity in a sense. They have different backgrounds for a reason. It's okay to challenge ideas. Don't challenge people. And that's where that ego confidence comes in, right? Challenge the idea of someone confident. Be like, the idea doesn't seem right. It could be wrong, like what you said, but it might be this, egotistical person is going to challenge the person, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And again, who do most junior people want to follow? They want to follow the person that has that natural skill set to be able to bring everybody's idea. I always look at the room, and if there's a junior member of my team that hasn't said anything throughout the whole meeting, I stop and I ask them, do you have anything to share? Do you have any thoughts? Sometimes it's the people that don't want to speak up that have actually the most creative thought going through their mind about the project. They're just nervous.
Yeah.
Right? They haven't felt that sense of empowerment to speak up. And I think if you could facilitate that and pull that characteristic out of a person, one, they turn around, they value you because you just made them look good. And two, so now they're like, you're someone I see as an ally, as someone I want to kind of come to with my ideas. and now you're working more together, right? So I think you're executing a lot more because you have someone else in the room with a new talent. So, going back to what I was saying is there's different people on my team that have different skill sets. I constantly tell my business partner, we got to leverage what they're good at. Stop throwing them things that they're not. We have way too much going on our day to day. Leverage if someone's really good at research, let them do that. Someone's really good at being at operational, let them do the operational stuff. Someone's really good at pitching and sales, more charismatic, put them in front of the client, right? Like someone's more good at, documentation, have them prepare all the account paperwork. At the end of the day, as long as we're bringing in revenue and we're bringing in clients and market share and making clients wealthy, that's all. That's what our assignment is, right?
That's right.
So it's going back to group projects in college, right? Like there's always going to be that one person you think that didn't do anything, but maybe they were thinking about something. They just didn't speak up, right? And some people are going to be more vocal than others, and I think you got to leverage that as well, right? Some people are better on email than they are on the phone, right? So I think those are all things that I carry with myself day to day.
That makes total sense, man. I gotta ask. So, you mentioned a couple different people, but who would you say was the most influential or biggest mentor that
Oh, I've had a lot of mentors. If any of them see this, I'm thankful for every single. When I think about who's been the most influential, I mean, I guess I got to say my current senior business partner, him a lot.
Yeah.
I think that he's someone that's pushed me outside my comfort zone on many occasions. He's someone that's taken me to points of anger, or I'm just like I'm ready to snap. He's someone that's taken me points of questioning my own abilities, but it's because he's always thought more of me. And I think when you take a step back and you think to, why would that person make me so angry on that day, or why would that person keep making me feel like I'm getting pushed over email or spanked over email? If you want to, if you want to say, it's because they want more of you. They expect more of you. And I remember when I hit my certain threshold financially, and I got a little lazy. And he was the first person that pulled me aside immediately. He's like, look, the purpose of you getting in lucrative situations in life, lazy, so you can want more, right? And like just hearing that instantly when you're starting to make an adjustment or a change in your behavior is the type of things you need. So he's someone that I think values me in a way that always wants more out of me.
Yeah.
And I think that means a lot. And I share things with him sometimes, privately, things, whether I'm going through things in my, relationship world with a girl or parents fighting with them, etc. And he always takes the time to give me his best thought or advice on it. Meaning he's also 8 to 10 years older. I think he's 8 years older to be exact. He's pretty much gone through it at some point himself, whether that's a fight with a parent because they're getting old and they're losing track of how to manage their day to day, whether that's a fight with a girl, etc. And he really, I could honestly genuinely say he always keeps my best interest at heart. And I think, again, when I tell people who to choose a mentor at a junior level, I say, look at the room and pick someone whose skill set is something you don't have. Because that's what I used to do. I used to go look at the person what do they have? Are they really good at Excel? Let me make that person my mentor. They can start teaching me Excel, right? So that was what I did as a junior person. Now that I've gotten to a point where I'm much more of a senior manager, or I'm in a managerial role, I now pick my mentors based on who's going to keep it real with me, who's going to tell me when you're wrong. And he is someone that would tell me, you're wrong, but let me teach you how to be right.
Yeah.
Right? Let me also take the time to teach you how to be right. And I think he was someone that was extremely influential during mentioned, what was the hardest struggle I've had recently going through that bank failure. He was with me. He was with me throughout that whole thing. And he was with me till the end when it happened on that Friday. First person he called at the market close was me, just to check on me because he knew how much. I mean, at that point, I was, like I told you, I was working like to 3, 4 in the morning every day, waking up at 6. Even if I tried to sleep, I couldn't sleep. And he knew I had given him, and I told him, literally the first thing out of my words when he called me that day, I said, I just wish I could have done more. And he's like, look at the last 63 days of your life. I don't know if you could have. You did everything you can. And I think every client knows you did. I think every teammate, I think everybody across the firm saw you sending emails at 3 in the morning, questioning, throwing thoughts out there. Hey guys, could this work? Hey guys, is anybody thinking about this? I was just always kind of mind was going. And I think that it created that sense where it's people stopped looking at me as just middle management, started looking at me like that guy's part of running a larger business. And people like now when I send an email, they reply. Like doesn't matter what level, and managing director, etc. They're like this, and I put together my emails very thoughtfully, etc. And look, and there's always rooms for improvement, and I say that because I was just getting advice from a good friend while I was out here to use AI to put together my emails and things like that. That could make me more efficient because sometimes I take a little long putting emails together. But this particular person, this mentor, like I said, goes back to he's always wanted me to do better. He's always wanted me to kind of carry the right reputation and create the right brand for myself in the community as well.
Right.
He tells me, you don't want this lifestyle out there where people are like, oh, he's great at work, but he's mean outside of work, or
That's
he
right.
thinks he's that ego person. We go back to the ego. Thinks he could walk into restaurants and treat the waiter the wrong way,
Yeah.
treat the hostess the wrong way, isn't thankful, isn't polite, things like that. He's like, you got to carry that sense of reputation across the board, everything you do. So he's someone I value tremendously. I think he's done a phenomenal job for me. I think he always says to me, I'm part of his family, and he would do anything he could for me. And I genuinely believe he would. I genuinely know if I was ever in a really bad situation in the hospital, he'd probably be the first one I would call, because he would probably stop what he was doing to come help me. And that's not to say my brother or my father haven't been phenomenal mentors, or
No,
my
of
mother,
course.
or even my best friend growing up, because they've all played a magnificent role in my development. But he's just someone that I talk to every day. I mean, I've been on vacation and I probably talk to him 20 times a day, even on vacation. And it's not like I'm working. I never look at it like, oh, my boss is calling me. It's literally just he's calling me. Like, and I'm just like, what's up? What's on your mind? Let's exchange thoughts. Let's creatively think how to manage this email together, etc. And I think he values that as well, because he sees a little bit of me in him, etc. And I think it's made our bond like very lasting. And look, I think I still got so much to learn. And now he's teaching me a lot more about how to manage my parents and how to be patient with them. And again, that's someone now that's taking it. I'm not just here for you work wise. I'm here for you on a personal level as well.
Yeah.
And those are the type of mentors I think you want. You want people that actually care about he could tell when I'm having a bad day, pulls me aside, goes, let's go grab a coffee. And he knows something's on my mind, and I could share whether I had, a breakup with a girl I was dating, etc. And he's like, I could just sense it. And it's because you spend so much time together. You're family at that point. You're bonded. And that's why they say you don't have to necessarily be blood to be a brother, because I think eventually you know so much about each other that you know the ups and downs, and you're there with them during ups and downs. You're there with them in the good times and then in the bad times.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that, man. And with such a beautiful thought, I want to bring it back to a little bit darkness as well.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And
Let's keep it real. I appreciate it.
What would you say was your biggest mistake?
My biggest mistake. Damn. I play this devil's advocate with myself, and I say, I'm 40 years old right now, not married, no kids. And I feel like your biggest asset in life is time, and I've had this amazing, successful career because I was able to devote myself long hours to my career. But I wish I would have devoted myself at a younger age. And I say that because, even as I get old, my back starts to feel a little sore. I know I'm not going to maybe be able to throw the ball with my son, or if I continue down this path of how busy I am with schedule, am I going to be able to make every ballerina for my daughter or every baseball game for my son? And time keeps passing, and, you hear these stories, in the news or in social media, young people dying from cancer, etc. So, everybody has, at the end of the day, a clock. And, one thing I wondered to myself is, should I had settled and, started a family? Because it would have been great, and I see my business, I go back to my business partner. He has his family, 3 kids. He comes home every day. He says it's a second job. I'm like, is it a second job? Like, I would love to come home, swing my daughter around and be like, I just killed it at work, and now I'm going to kill it at home, put her to bed, reading her a book or helping her with her homework, vice versa. But now I come home and I have a dog, and that's great. But, I see people like Mike, our other investor. He has Billy, this beautiful daughter, and they have this phenomenal relationship. And even when we're like in the midst of a mid conversation, it's like, I got to go play with Billy. And I bet it's...
Or she'll come and join.
Yeah,
she's part of it.
Exactly. But I bet it's one of the best parts of his day,
Absolutely.
right? Because that's what you do it for, right? You do it for your family. And I think everybody I've talked to that's had kids, they always have that sense of genuine smile when they say kids is the best thing that ever happened to them. I think, again, it's a trade-off, right? You won't be able to be at every meeting if you have kids, because you're going to end up having to make a sacrifice to say, look, I'm not going to miss my kid's project this time, or
Yeah.
I got to come home because my kid's sick, etc. So I get it from that perspective. But that's one thing I kind of always think to myself, should I have done that or not? Because I like to think I'm going to be a great father.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm definitely going to be that father, grilling food, etc. Spend a lot of quality time. But like, you know, you think to yourself, you know, you want to spend those quality moments with someone. Not to say it can't happen. I think men have a different kind of biological clock, so it could still happen, et cetera.
Sure.
And people are living longer. But I think it's a balance in life where, you know, I think it helps people that are successful because it disconnects them from their job.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're never going to raise your voice when you're angry. You're going to, even if you get off an angry phone call, you're going to go and hug your child, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's one of the things I think to myself as a big mistake. Another one for me, I would say, you know, that I look back on, you know, and I don't know if it's a mistake or not, but I don't know if you know this about me, but I've never driven a car. I don't have a driver's license.
What?
Yeah.
Wait. I don't know this about you.
No.
You've never driven a
I've
car?
never driven a car. No. I always tell people, you know, there's people that drive and people that are driven. But I've never driven a car, and I like to think that would have gave me so much more freedom in life. Nowadays, with technology, with Uber, Lyft, and everything you have, things are easy. And I never, for the record, and I go on camera for the record, felt that I needed a car because nowadays I could get around. But, you know, one of my other mistakes is that's something most teenagers have, you know, at 16. And I've gone and taken a driver's test and passed. I just never actually gone and actually learned. And it's every time because I get distracted. Again, I almost think some people say it's better for me because I'm in the backseat of an Uber, like answering emails on a business call, etc.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. And maybe nowadays where technology isn't going, I'll have my own Waymo and it'll pick me up and take me anywhere. I can send it to pick up anything. But that's another thing that I always tell myself, damn, that's something I go on dates. I send her an Uber Lux and I, you know, send myself a Lyft and we meet at the restaurant. And sometimes it's a deal breaker for girls. You know, some girls are like, what do you mean you don't drive? Like how are we going to go on trips? I'm like, I mean, we'll figure it out. Like, most of the time you're taking an Uber to an airport anyways and taking a flight. But you know, that's another thing I almost did in the last relationship I was in. She was really pressuring me to do it, but I didn't do it. And we broke up shortly after Valentine's Day. And I had my test schedule and I just said, no, I'm not going to go do it. I just said, I'm not going to go do it. So that's another like random thing about myself. I don't know if
it's a very random thing.
I don't think it's a mistake or not, but people always say one of the most interesting facts about yourself in these large conferences and stuff.
Yeah.
And people their jaws just drop. You know, I was sponsored in skateboarding. I skateboarded, so I pushed wood, and that's how I got around as a teenager.
Yeah.
Once I got to college in Wisconsin, everything was on campus.
Yeah.
And once I was in New York, I lived right next to the office on Wall Street. I got to and from Wall Street easily. When I lived in Chicago, I lived right downtown. Got to and from office easily. LA, I live literally 5 minutes from my office. I walk to work. In Los Angeles, that's like unheard of.
Yeah.
People are like sitting in traffic for an hour at a time.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, on weekends when I finally would drive, I'm usually being very social, having a cocktail or, you know, hanging out with friends that I probably wouldn't drive. So that's kind of just how my life kind of has worked out. But I wonder because I think a lot of people, mentors and close friends tell me, I bet if you had a car, your life would drastically change because you would have all this other freedom. You would drive to Santa Barbara, San Diego, down in LA, et cetera, and apply yourself. But for me, I just haven't got around to it. And I'm 40 years old, so it's a pretty random thing to bring up. But you said what's one of my biggest mistakes. I probably think to myself, probably not learning how to drive a car is probably one of the craziest things I've never done.
That is the first time I heard that. I
learned how to fly a plane before I learned how to drive
a car. Something, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
No, dude, that's really cool. That's very, very interesting. So I wanted to touch base on a couple of things there because the first thing that we talked about was the family side. And, you know, I got to say, I agree with you 100% because even now when, like, I remember talking to my dad and my dad was like, oh, like, you're fucking 20. When are you going to get married and have kids? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
Like,
especially for us in the Latin community,
right,
my mom's always still grabbing my ears.
Come on,
she's like,
what are you waiting
for?
And he's like, well, that's when I had you. What's wrong with you? Look, we're great. Everything's great. Everything worked out. I'm like, but I get it. He's like, listen, you're never going to be ready. So don't ever think about that. You're never going to be ready. And then the other thing is you're mentioning like about the time thing. And this is something interesting that happened to me. Now, I don't have kids, but I do have a wife. And since I've got married, one thing that did happen is that, yes, it's absolutely true. You do have way less time for all those random meetings that you can have.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that because of that, you kind of force yourself to have a lot more purposeful meetings. And because you have a whole other person that's working towards the same goal as you, it kind of exponentially grows into and towards that goal. And you also have one thing that's very, very interesting, and that's the intuition side. Because I know you, I know me, we're very like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. Yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'll be there right now. Opportunity, fuck yeah, I'm going. I'm dropping everything. Let's go there.
Yeah.
I'll come back and finish up whatever I have to do.
Yeah.
I won't sleep if I don't have, right?
Exactly. You'll bear through the pain of like lack of sleep.
Exactly.
Drink extra espresso
Whatever
that morning,
you need,
etc.
you'll get it done, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the wife goes, but is this really the best use? Because remember, you have this thing tomorrow, and if you rest tonight, then you'll do that better. But is this really where you need to be, or is this like kind of a side thing that you kind of want to see what happens? And then you start to think different, and I'm like, holy fuck, like I can't imagine what that would be like when you actually have like a kid as well, because that's like 100% like you have to dedicate. That thing needs to live.
Yeah,
It's gotta like survive. So I definitely can see that being, and that's a very heartfelt and open answer. So I do really appreciate that.
Yeah. For me, I mean, look, I think I got a dog. I got a miniature schnauzer. She's a girl, and her name is Sweetie. She was my first introduction into that. And even now when I travel, she goes on hunger strikes and she doesn't eat with my dad, even though she's with my parents, which they love her and adore her and give her treats. And then that's just a dog, right? And I'm not saying, and I treat my dog as a child, for the record. But once you have an 8-year-old child that speaks up and you heard her feelings or his feelings, and those earlier years are so important to their confidence.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things is, as hard as my parents worked, through those earlier years as they kind of built their home here in the United States, they always had time for me, and I got to a point, I think it was like 3rd grade math, where they just couldn't help anymore with homework. So my brother kind of helped, and then I got to like middle school and he couldn't help. And then I had to ask neighbors, etc. But like, it's one of those things like when you have a family, they have to come first, right? When you have a wife, she comes first. That's what they say, right? When you fall in love, you finally learn to put someone first ahead of yourself. For me right now, I definitely, I quote unquote care about myself more, but part of the thing that's happened in my lifestyle is I care about the people that care about me more, right? So I do take time out of my day to make sure they're okay. I check in with them, just checking in on you. That's one of the things, even in my fraternity brothers have said, damn, it could be 6 months, but you'll pick up the phone on a Sunday and I'll be like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's taking 6 months for me to call you, but I'm fine giving you a call while I'm having my sunny side up eggs, etc. And I'm thinking, how are your kids doing, etc. So I see everybody around me has got the family. And, everybody calls me uncle, when I go meet their kids and stuff like that, because they know how close I am to their parents. But it'd be nice to have that for myself. So that's one of the things sometimes, again, it's a give and take, right? It's one of those things that you're like, should I have settled down sooner? I had an opportunity to settle down with my high school sweetheart, and she went on to have kids. And she's pretty happy from what I could see from a distance and stuff like that. But for myself, what could it have been? I mean, my life could have been different. I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. I tell my mentees, like, I'm like, for the people that really want to make money in this world, right? Once you make $225, $250, with the amount of tax you get taxed in the United States, every dollar you make after that, I mean, you're gonna make more and more, but you're gonna live very comfortably, right? And when I say comfortably, you're gonna live in the top middle class, right? So, and nowadays, if you study and you apply yourself, you could get to that number fairly quickly, as long as you dedicate yourself to your career. But that's what I'm saying. What's the trade-off? I think there's certain things money can't buy.
Yeah.
And I hate to go into that topic, especially being from Wall Street, but the happiest people I see in my business are the people that don't worry so much. People say, well, it's easy for you not to worry about money when you got millions in the... Well, no, because I think eventually, similar to me, you hit that 250 threshold and you think, great, I want to double that. I want to get to $500,000. And then you get to that $500,000 and then you're kind of like, all right, I mean, a saver's always going to be a saver. A spender's always going to be a spender, right? So you're like, am I really going to spend this much money on a weekend basis or on a day-to-day basis, right? So you start to value what matters to you more. And I think the people that I see happy are the people with kids. I think, there's always going to be struggles.
For sure.
And there's sometimes some kids that get sick at a very young age, etc. It's not easy, like everything's a challenge, but I think it adds something to your life where you're now more focused on them, and that's a good thing for yourself. For me, my dog readjusted my stress. I used to be stressed out all the time, but now she comes and paws at me and barks or licks me, and I'm like, oh, like, let me pick her up. And I hear a dog.
Speaking of the dog,
a dog barking right now. but it's cute, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's one of those things. Again, it's a trade-off, right? You want to, at the end of the day, you want to have your cake and eat it, right? So,
Yeah.
like in a sense, as your cake being your career, your success.
Mhm.
I think the icing on the cake is that family part where you have someone to spend it with,
Yeah.
whether that's your wife and you're traveling, or that's you and your kids traveling, like I mean all that, and I see good friends like Mike who travels with his wife and his daughter all the time, and he just looks so happy in pictures, etc. And I'm like, meanwhile I'm like, at some nightclub and popping bottles, and I'm like, my pictures are a lot different, right? So,
Yeah.
so with that said,
Well, I don't know. After this episode, maybe some single ladies out there. Hey, listen.
maybe we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, so I think those are some of the things.
Yeah.
I advise people to really, really focus on. If you find something where you could start a family with, don't necessarily be so focused on your career. I think good things will come. Like you said, your wife is there to kind of readjust you, course correct.
Yeah.
You should focus on this part instead of that part, because you need that sometimes. Because if it's up
Absolutely.
to me, I'm always like 1 a.m. I'm sending emails. People are like, go to sleep. I've had compliance send me emails and be like, why are you still awake? I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know, can't sleep. Just finished watching Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
The Lannisters make me think about this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so things like that happen all the time, right? So,
Yeah.
so in that sense, those are the
Absolutely.
things I would share with people.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100% agree. Boom. Let's get into the rapid fire round. You ready?
Mhm.
All right. What's a book that changed your life?
Great Gatsby.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah,
Love that
it's a book that I loved.
Yeah.
That and The Outsiders. Great Gatsby came first because I've
Yeah.
always kind of had that persona of kind of the businessman,
Yeah.
et cetera. But The Outsiders also always stood out to me because obviously I love Pony Boy and kind of the whole book of friendship and
Yeah.
having each other's back and getting through stuff and being poor and being rich and kind of what that means to each other. And I think it's something that I applied to myself my whole life. So
I love it.
those two books. Yeah.
I love it. So that might answer the next question, but who character, fiction, nonfiction, books, movies, cartoons, anywhere, what character do you identify with most?
It could be movies as
Anything.
well. What character I identify? I think I'm gonna say Jordan Gecko in Wall Street.
Yeah.
Just someone that I've always admired, and one of my favorite quotes of him. He's like, in Wall Street, if you want a friend, get a dog.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I got a dog. No, but it's someone that in the movie just plays such a very good depiction of what it's like to be a top trader on
Yeah.
ruthless, and to be cutthroat and to be business. And if you follow the sequel, you start to see how he lost his family.
Yes.
Again, it goes back to the topic of family.
Right.
But how he fought so hard to try to keep a relationship with his daughter in that second movie, but still, he couldn't help it. When it came down to it, he still ended up kind of doing the son-in-law wrong, and it's one of those things. I think it's that dynamic that we've kind of touched on today, that family, yet that money, and how do you find that balance, right?
Yeah.
So I think he played a really good role where it shows you, I think one of my best friend's parents said it to me when I got my scholarship, you're going to college now it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. And I said, oh, getting straight A's? And they're like, no, managing distractions, right? So managing distractions in the sense on Wall Street, there's always going to be time. Money never sleeps. And I think it's one of the characters that he says that money never sleeps, right?
Yep.
So it's one of those things that applies a lot to Wall Street. I think they did a really good job filming that.
Love it. What's your biggest red flag in a person?
Charity, when they're not nice to people. The people that don't treat waiters right, hostesses right, the people that are rude to people from a cab driver. I think that speaks a lot of volumes of how they were raised. Something that for me, I've gone on dates and I've seen the way women speak to some waiters, and I'm just like, it's an immediate like red flag. That and eye contact. I think eye contact's another big thing for me. People that can't make eye contact, I tend to feel a little bit something's off, because I'll be like looking like, make that eye contact, like I don't care how many times we got to cheers, you're gonna make an eye contact at some point. Right. And the people that can is another thing. People that can make eye contact with you, there's a sign something's clearly off there. There's a sense of either they're not telling you the truth, they're not being honest, they're hiding something behind kind of those eyes.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's a red flag for me.
Love it. What's the best money you ever spent?
My dog.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell my mom, if I'm gonna leave my money to anybody, she's getting it. Right? She can have all the trees she wants in the world. best money I've ever spent. Her and probably gifts from my mom. I love,
Amazing.
and the thing about my mom that I love buying things for her, she never wants it. Like, and
Yeah.
I've taken her to designer stores and she just doesn't want them. Like, and it just makes me so happy. And eventually she's just like, stop. Like, I don't want that. Like, just don't. Like, I'd rather just have you around.
Yeah.
Put your phone away. We watch novellas sometimes together.
Yeah.
And like I'll watch them with her. I mean, the girls on and they're fun to watch, but spending time with her as well is good. So spa appointments with her are great. But I mean, the most fun I ever have spending my money when I'm spending is on my dog.
Yeah.
Buying her, we always take her into like the dog store. She's always buying like new toys. She knows what she's doing. She goes over to the toy section. She's picking out, her new squeaky toy. So, for me, it makes me feel great. It feels great to see her kind of like jump around and get excited. So we have a great relationship. I mean, she's obviously one of my closest best friends.
I love it. That's amazing. What's something that you've changed your mind on recently?
Marriage. So yeah, I definitely think I've hit the 40s, and I'm definitely, people say you always get to this point in life, in maturity, where you want to settle down. I definitely feel now more different than I did in my 30s, my 20s, where I'm like, yeah, it's something I'm actually in pursuit of. I don't think I'm gonna force it. In the sense that I'm not just going to go up to the first girl I'm dating and be like, let's get married. But it's something that I'm more
open to
and invested to, meaning I will make a trade-off. Like I will tell my business partner, hey, I'm going on this date. Put it on your calendar. Don't call me for those 3 hours. You know, like what I mean? Like I really want to focus on building and fostering this relationship with this new person I'm dating. So that's something, whereas before I used to be like, it'll just happen when it happens. Now I'm definitely more devoted and definitely seeking it, if that makes sense.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's a 60-second message to the world?
I think 60-second message to the world is continue driving yourself, continue pushing and raising the benchmark. Don't feel that when you make a mistake, you can't bounce back. Take a step back, learn from it, devote yourself to bettering yourself, being self-aware. Continue to treat people with good manners, because everybody's might be having a bad day, and you changing, holding that door for them, smiling at them, asking them how their day is going will be extremely impactful to them. And I think in a world where so many people are devoted to social media, it's good to pay attention to everybody individually and not just the people you're kind of seeing in social media having a good life. Check in on the people that aren't posting, and see if they're doing okay. See what they're up to, and lastly, but take care of your health. I think nowadays there's so much going around in the chemicals that people eat, etc. Sway yourself towards eating more organic food, getting exercise every day, getting sunlight every day, getting your sleep. I think that matters a lot. And I think that's what's going to drive who continues to live larger in life. And I think the last thing I would say is, the same thing I kind of mentioned earlier, stay hungry, stay foolish, right? So continue making those investments, continue knowing that you're not going to always hit a home run with every investment, but you might come out on top. All it takes is one, right? The people that have had these phenomenal stories with their investments, they invested in plenty of other startups that didn't do well.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind. Don't think that because you put some money on something and didn't do well, that you're going to give up on it. No, you got to continue to be creative. So, I think those are my takeaways.
I love it, man. Dude, how can people get in touch with you?
They could reach me on my personal email, gilmar.valencia@gmail.com, or on Instagram, Mr._GCV. Feel free to reach out, send me an email. Happy to be a mentor to the junior people out there listening. Happy to be friends for the people that want to travel to Los Angeles and eat some nice restaurant recommendations. And always up for meeting new people, and definitely always excited to take people out to eat. So,
Dude, amazing. My
good.
Man.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me.
A year and a half later, but we finally did it.
Hey,
right?
We did it, man. I'll see. Hopefully this summer won't be another year and a half before I see you.
Yeah, more sooner, and a lot more fun. Check out the restaurant, check out the hotel. We'll be hanging out there a lot more, especially when the rooftop is done, and a lot more reason to visit now as well too.
Yeah,
right?
I can't wait to like the top floor's done. I'm gonna stay in one of those rooms right away. I'm excited, and the restaurant's phenomenal. The food was great the other night. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my man. There you have it, guys. Until next time, this is Nemology. Peace out. One idea stands out from this conversation. Confidence isn't believing nothing will go wrong. It's trusting yourself to handle whatever does. Gilmar's journey proves that real leadership is built through adversity, humility, and consistency, not titles or successes alone. If this conversation gave you something valuable, subscribe, share it with somebody who needs it, and follow Nemology for more conversations about entrepreneurship, mindset, and building a meaningful life. We'll see you in the next one.